Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we'll be having a more informal than usual discussion, ranging on everything from membership to social activities.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have 3/4 of our usual crew. We have very worshipful brother David Colbeth, who's a past master of King Solomon Lodge number 60 in Auburn Law. Worshipful brother Stephen Chung, past master of Prince Charles number 153 up in Kelowna, British Columbia. And I'm Matt Appel. I'm a past master of Mill Creek number 243, and we meet in Montlake Terrace, Washington. And today we're having an informal discussion about just sort of the things that seem salient in our lodges at the moment, which include membership and keeping guys active and having some social activities.
Where to?
We went down to New Westminster for the DMLA. In BC, DMLA was hosting a 90s reunion, and we thought it was all kind of funny that they were not including those of us from the 70s and 80s. So 35 of us crashed the party, right? And 8 of us did a senior DMLA degree for the show, if you will. But yeah, DMLA's hurting, man. They had they said they had 3 chapters, so it was like, okay, I know to have a chapter you gotta have 25 boys, but they had 12 boys in total. So they basically have 3 clubs.
Yeah, it's not dissimilar down here. I know Henry's chapter is hurting for kids.
Yeah, well, I was chatting with River Peatman, and I said, it's they got to have something in common, right? Like back in my day, it was a lot easier because we were just looking for somewhere to be other than home and not on the street, right? Now, I mean, it's different. So, like I told them the story about Everett chapter, right? Where they built and flew glider airplanes. And they got so big, they had 200 members, and it was like take forever to get through the chairs. And it was to the point where guys would come in and they wouldn't even dream of even being able to get through the chairs before they age out, right? And so they had to split, and they split. And but then one of them kind of petered off because they didn't have that same thing holding them together, right? And so I told him, maybe in this day and age, it's programming. They're going to make a game or something like that. Maybe it's something a little different, right? That they all could kind of buy into, right? So, and it can be different for every chapter, right? But because the 7 cardinal virtues and that all that kind of stuff isn't enough of an attraction these days.
Yep. Just like with Lodge.
And with so many things. Yeah, but Lodge is different. Lodge, if one applies himself, he can actually, improve himself based on the teachings, right? It's applied knowledge. Knowledge isn't power, it's applied knowledge, right? So, we know that we can do that in Lodge, and that's the appealing factor to it, right? Whether guys do it or not, it's a different story, but Lodge has several different things to offer, and DMLA, I mean, they're younger and they have several different options to look at, so depends on what they want, and it's a hard sell these days, I'll tell you. I get it, but I don't know, it sure would be a shame if it disappeared completely.
Yeah. Yep, I agree.
Right.
Unfortunately, my son's one of the ones who's not too interested in it, even though he's a member.
How many guys are in his chapter?
8.
Mm. Right. Like what's their strengths? Like how old are they?
They're all about my son's age, actually. My son is 16. They're all in the, I'd say 15 to 18 age range, but yeah, 16 or 17, most of them.
What's your son into outside
Yeah,
of?
that's the problem. He's the other kids are pretty into like video games and that sort of stuff, which Henry's conversant with, but he's not really big into. And he's just he's not that excited by the meetings, which I can understand, believe me. But they were doing some cool stuff, like some of the outside the meetings. They were doing we went to one where they went down to a forge and we made knives out of horseshoes and stuff like that. That was awesome, and he loved it. And then like they didn't do anything like that for months now, and so it's hard to get him to go.
Right. Well, glass blowing. There's different things, right? You just got to keep trying to find, and maybe that's the thing. Maybe they make things to go explore their mission until they find something they all really go, hey, this is really cool. We could actually do this. Like ceramics is not really high on most boys' lists, right? But they can get excited about building a shop and having a kiln and creating things, right? Maybe they don't. Maybe it's cars they're into at that age, right? I know. When I was 16, it was Friday night at Times Square in Richmond, right? Who could burn the most rubber and not get caught, right?
Yeah, that was when Henry joined the older boys who were right about to age out. There's a bunch of them that were really into Dungeons and Dragons, which Henry really enjoys. And so he went a couple of times and had fun with them, and then they aged out and disappeared. And now the boys that are still there with him are just not into the same things as him. And that's fine, whatever. Different people are different, but it just doesn't keep Henry going to meetings.
Yeah. Well, different ideas, right? Maybe it's a brainstorming session you have with Henry, and or maybe maybe it's not for him, but who knows, right?
Did the other guys like that forging?
Yeah, I think it was pretty unanimously popular. I think it'd be a great activity for a lodge. Apparently, one of the guys who, I think I've said this before, one of the guys who either owns or runs the place is a brother down there in like Delta White Center Lodge or someplace down there. And so he was really great with the boys, and it was a great time. He and I both each made a knife out of a half a horseshoe, and it was a lot of fun. He was talking about going back and stuff. I said, I would go with the lodge. That would be fun.
Did your assembly have regular, like almost every other week or at least monthly events, things going on?
Like they did for a while, and then it sort of petered out. And I honestly, I'm not sure exactly where they stand right now. Communication is not their strong point.
Your assembly, or
the chapter, yeah.
The chapter. Well, I'm sorry, I did switch gears on you. I was thinking about assemblies too, but our assembly, our Rainbow Assembly, one of the things they do really well is it's almost too much, but there's always an activity. And I was thinking, as you guys were talking about it, I thought, even our chapter, I'm not a member of the lodge where our assembly meets, but I am a member of the lodge where I'm a chairman of where our DMLA meet. And one thing they don't do enough of, I think, is have activities outside of their meetings.
Yep.
And I get it. There's only a couple of guys, and so it's kind of hard to have activities when you only have one or two guys. But if you don't have activities to invite people to, you can't invite friends or new guys to things, and they get bored going to a meeting, like you said.
Yep.
So it'd almost be better just to have activities.
Actually, what they did in Ogopogo when they were building back up was there was a new bowling alley, laser bowling Friday nights, right? And there was a deal on, right, for teenagers, right? So it was like, yeah, okay. So they made their thing for a while. Every Friday night they'd go bowling, right? And they bowl a few frames, and they'd, be able to invite people to it, right? And there was food there, and there was a pub attached to it, so you could get food, and parents could have, food and beverages there, and the whole nine yards, right? Um, and that was relatively inexpensive, right? Way to get together and be doing something that's active, that's not on the computer screen or on their phones, right? So maybe something like that'll help,
Yeah.
and then of course, if they were doing that, one we said, well, hey, got a couple guys were saying this gets a little expensive every week, maybe we should do it every month. I said, or maybe you should have a car wash on a Saturday and raise enough money you don't have to pay for it, right? So every 3 months they had a car wash, right? And well, basically they did 4 a year, but most of them were in the summer and spring, summer, and fall, and then they had an extra one in the summer, right? And they raised a lot of money, right? So they were able to pay for their bowling.
And our girls, they don't do necessarily things that cost money. Like my daughter did science night, she called it, and it was just, I think they made elephant toothpaste or whatever they call it. It's foam basically, and they had a great time doing that. And they had a spa night where they got together and did their nails up and did a foot massage thingy, and so it wasn't necessarily things that cost money. It just was just kind of getting together and fun hanging out. And they happen to do it at the temple, and so it's a convenient place for them to meet. But they could do it at somebody's house for that matter.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day in DMLA for us, I mean, there was something going, because there was 25 Bethels and 17 chapters, so there was something going every night, pretty much throughout the week, and every weekend there was an event somewhere, right? And some kind of social somewhere, right? And so it all, whether it was a track meet, whether it was a bottle drive, whatever. I mean, back in the day, they used to pay you if you collected newspapers and dropped them off to recycle them, eh? Not anymore, but
Our assembly did that for a long time, and they've decided that was just too much.
yeah, right. And it ended up getting down to the point where the advisors were just driving around doing special pickups for those that would call and say, hey, I got some, right? And you don't want to turn down the offer of donations, right? Because they usually came with bottles and all sorts of donations, right? So, yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah, that was my idea when I was master the second time, was to basically say we meet on Tuesday nights, and it was basically to say there's going to be something every Tuesday. So whatever it is, if it's going to be a ritual practice or a go out to dinner or bowling or whatever it is, every Tuesday there's going to be something for lodge. And if I can't make it, or if not everyone can make it, that's not a big deal. Sure, there'll be something next Tuesday kind of thing. And like, the fourth thing I went to, where it was me and one other guy, I sort of said, okay, fine, I lose. So I'm doing that. But yeah, that was my brilliant plan for a little while.
And it's tough to change the minds of people though in 6 months or a year. And I've found I think I mentioned this before, our fourth Thursday, we have our social night. And for the first 3 years, and then throw COVID in the middle of it. Actually, if there's 4 years, then throw COVID in the middle of it. And then now we've taken about a year or so to come out of it. But I think if you asked most people from our lodge, and even a few outside of our area, not so much from the district, I don't necessarily quote advertise it heavily to the district, but I probably should a little more. But our deputy does, our current deputy does. But anyway, from our lodge or as visitor lodge, especially those social nights, they would say, oh, of course, King Solomon has a social night on the fourth Thursday. And so now, but it's taken 6 years to get to that point. So you just have to be diligent about it. And you have to want to do it. That's the other thing, is that I want to get together with these people. It's selfishly, I wanted to get together with guys, and I also needed an outlet for inquirers. And so we just had to do it. And so I just wanted to hang out with the guys and give me another reason to hang out. And yes, one time in 7 years, I was there by myself. And there's been a few times that it's been me and a couple of guys, but we've also had 20 people there.
Yeah. And are you doing it once a month?
Once a month, the fourth Thursday every month, except November and December, of course.
Yeah.
But we did. A funny thing is, though, last year in December, we had decided, we're not going to have it. And then that Thursday kind of rolled around. It was actually like Tuesday or Wednesday. It rolled around. And I said to the master, hey, when it was a week after Christmas. So it was between Christmas and New Year's. And I texted him. I said, hey, I'm kind of bored missing my guys. You want to get together? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, do you mind if I ask a few guys? And he goes, no. And so I texted, and he was brand new master. He had just come in December, the first week of December. And so I texted about 20 or 30 guys. And that was one of our biggest. I think we had 15 guys show up 24 hours in advance notice. And one of our inquirers said, I thought you canceled this. I just talked to John. I said, yeah, we did, but we just changed our mind.
Yeah, I know. I got guilted the other day. I went to Scottish Rite in Kamloops, and one of the guys going there for the degree from Kelowna, I thought he lived in Vernon, but he said, well, he moved to Kelowna, and he said, and then he goes on the calendar, and there's supposed to be a social at the hall on Friday night. Nobody was there, and it was like, oh yeah, right. We talked about going back to these things, but the commitment was really heavy, right? And I'd been doing it now for 4 years, right? And yeah, every now and then you're there by yourself, right? But the other lodge, their guys started to get active too, and then COVID hit. Like literally, they came in for about last 4 months before COVID, right? So they were keen on it. So I'm gonna approach them again and say maybe they alternate hosting it, right? Because it's all the planning. I can get people to show up, but I can't get people to come and work.
Well, that's why we don't do it at the temple.
No,
we don't do it. We go to a restaurant so that we don't have to clean up. We don't have to cook. If people want to eat, they can. If they don't, they don't.
Yeah.
And we just started. I missed it yesterday. I was up in Whistler, by the way, over the weekend. But on Saturday was our first official Saturday breakfast at that same restaurant. So every first Saturday now of the month, we're going to have a breakfast from 8 to 10 at that same restaurant where we have our social night. So now we'll have 3 social events. We'll have our supper before our meeting, the fourth Thursday, and the first Saturday every month on a regular basis. We'll have social events for lodge.
Okay.
And but again, we go to a restaurant, we get away from the lodge. Again, when I was deputy, I'd ask the guys.
And it's just the guys or spouses allowed?
On Saturday, it's focused on family, and anybody can come. Actually, we encourage that. I would, if it were me, I would prefer Thursdays to be just the guys. We've had some wives come and families come, and I try not to be, say anything about it, but I think, and it's also for inquirers to come. And so it's a double-edged sword. If an inquirer comes and sees family, they go, oh, that's cool. They're family oriented. But also if an inquirer comes and can he open up and can we talk about things when there's wives there?
Right.
So
you're in a restaurant, so you really can't,
Well, we have a back room. It's kind of like a back room area.
Oh, okay.
It's a little bit separated for the Thursday night, not the Saturday breakfast. But and so there's been a few times that I'd like to talk to some of the guys, especially the inquirers, about things, and it's been a little bit more difficult. But I love having the families there. I love having the kids there, and so it's a little bit different. So I don't know. It's been I don't know how to handle that, honestly. Because if a guy's coming, if that is what causes him to come and attend, then I'd rather have that than not.
Right.
I don't know if he listens to the show, but we'll see. I mean, I guess we're not publish this one. This might be a good conversation, a side talk conversation. But I guess I could edit this piece out. But if the problem is his wife talks 10 times more than he does,
right,
and answers all the questions. If anybody answers the questions, and she has an opinion about everything,
right,
and their daughter's amazing. She's cute and lovable. She's 3 or 4. She's just enough to be obnoxious, and they kind of ignore her.
Right.
And so one of us has to kind of pay attention to the daughter. It's like they get a night out.
And the setting is just regular space in a restaurant?
Well, again, that's the back room. That's the back room space.
The
But
back room.
but one of us kind of has to pay attention to the daughter, or I feel
Right.
like we do, and then
That's just the father in you that feels that way, dude.
yeah. But then the husband of the Mason doesn't get to speak at all, hardly,
Right.
because she's talking all the time. And
So maybe make a point of asking him pointed questions every now and then, so that he gets a chance to speak.
I've tried, and she says, "Well, he says
David,
this, or he thinks
what do you
that."
think about this, David? Right?
Maybe I'll have to do more of that.
Right. I know we have because we had our socials at the hall, and we had our more light nights at the hall, right? And we've experienced pretty much the exact same thing, except without the kids, right? Where our spouse just comes and over talks for their partner, right? So then we started asking pointed questions, and they got the hint, right?
Okay.
It's like, let someone else, but.
And I've mentioned that, like I just explained it, like to a new inquirer, what I envision the certain nights to be. Supper at the temple, I would believe that's also open to family. If they really wanted to bring their family, they could bring it to the supper, because we excuse ourselves at time to go into the meeting.
Right.
And it's also an opportunity for the people to meet. And then Thursdays, though, I've said, are kind of for the guys. And I said it loud enough that I'm pretty sure she heard me. She was not, because she can listen to 2 or 3 different conversations, it seems. But I was talking to the inquirer, and she was sitting right there, and I kind of said it loud and tried to say it loud enough that there may be some crossover, but whatever.
Right.
It's not, I don't know. I don't say in the message that it's Mason and men only, but.
Right. Well, that's some good ideas, though. I think I like the idea of not having it at the hall all the time.
Yeah.
Because, I was always the one getting stuck doing cleanup.
Yes.
Right. But, I'd much rather try and have a pancake breakfast at the hall once a month and cook for everybody, because I love to cook, right? But then I'm doing the cleanup all the time, right?
Yeah. So, yeah. Right. It's not
rewarding at that point.
Do those for special events, for if you have a parade or a city event or something, have a pancake breakfast and then just open it up and people can come. But yeah, every month having to do it, that's the other problem, is that, it's on the third Sunday of every month. Well, then the third weekend of every month, you can't do anything.
Yeah, exactly, right. So yeah,
I did feel bad not being here this last weekend for our first Saturday breakfast, but hey, it was, I know there were some guys there, and they got it covered, and
right.
I don't know who was there for sure, but I know there's at least 3 guys there.
And the restaurant doesn't give you a minimum commitment?
Nope.
That's good.
No, especially that time in the morning. I don't think they're that busy necessarily.
What time are you meeting in the morning?
What's that?
What time are you meeting?
It's 8 to 10. It's not too early, but on a Saturday, 8 to 10.
Right.
And then they have it's not a back room or a front room, but it's kind of a little bit of an area segregated. So I don't know. In the past, we had a breakfast at the temple, and it was a pain in the butt. And the guys that wanted to do it ended up, one of them passed away and one of them moved away, and then the other ones didn't want to do it. And then, so when I became master, I said, I'm not going to make anybody, because they all complain about it. They enjoy it, they say, but then they complain about it. So I said, okay, as master, so I negotiated with that same restaurant. They used to have an upstairs banquet hall. Now they rent it out to a dance troupe. But so I negotiated with them. I said, hey, can we have a breakfast upstairs? And because they used to have a buffet breakfast downstairs in this restaurant. Right. And I negotiated to have, basically a straight breakfast, bacon, eggs, maybe biscuit, and hash, bread. It was very simple.
Right.
But it was restaurant quality. And it was $6, super cheap. And I told him, I said, we'll give you 3 of it. We'll give you half of it. I'll give you $3. I just want to, I'm not really making a fundraiser, just I want to keep this tradition going. And so we did that all year, and it was pretty popular. We had between 20 and 30 people coming. Popular as far as our past popular had been. It was not 100 people, but I mean, before we'd have 5 or 10 people coming maybe. And so we had about 20 to 30 people coming, didn't have to clean up. The demolay were like standing around because they didn't know what to do. There was no cleanup to do. And then the next year, the next master and was convinced by the Eastern Star to let them bring it back to the temple. Oh, we'll cook breakfast. We'll do the breakfast at the temple. And he said, okay. I think out of 12 months, I think we did 6 of them. You'd go there and you'd show up and they're, oh, it's canceled. Or, oh, we're not going to do it this month. Or, oh, and then the food was not good at all. They did not do a good job. And then they didn't do it again. And then our breakfast was done.
Right.
It was too bad. Anyway.
Yeah. I know down south in District 10, I look on their calendar, right? They do, each lodge does host coffee once or twice a week. Each lodge hosts a breakfast meeting once a week, right? And there's like 5 lodges down there, right? So all they do is eat and drink coffee all the time, right? And
you got to be retired to go to the daytime breakfast.
They are. Well, it's down south here, they're pretty much all retired, right? Except a few, that district is a retired kind of district, right? So
that's what Jarrod was saying. Was it last time he was saying that, or where his lodge is, the average, he brings the average age down to by 20% or something.
Yeah.
He said most of them are in their 80s or 90s, I think he said, weren't they? Like,
yeah,
for sure 70s.
Yeah. Right. And I think, let me see. I know 1, 2, 3 out of Penticton lodges at work, and Jarrod's one of them.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, that's what I know anyways. Yeah. But actually I'm going down there again Wednesday. Yeah, they're gonna have an official visit, a fellowcraft degree, and some other thing they're gonna do on all on the same night. But
one thing I'd like to ask you guys about is engagement. How do you get guys that are young enough? We have a pretty youngish group of guys coming in. How do you get them engaged to take interest and responsibility for areas of the lodge, education or temple board or degrees or whatever? I joined when I was 38, I guess it was. And my wife was 8 months pregnant when I had my degree. And so I know how it is about working full time basically and raising kids and having kids and all. I know about that. I have, of course, have a great wife, and she is very supportive of everything I do, more or less. And so I understand that. But I'm wondering, I don't expect that necessarily from a young guy who has a young family, but I wonder where their commitment is. Is it just different? Maybe it's different.
So we were finding challenges in engagement as well. So one of the things that changed that was the 6-step program, because during the 6-step program, we find out what they're looking for. It's one of the very first things I ask them, right? What is it you're looking for, right? Are you looking for brotherhood? Are you looking for fellowship? Are you looking for knowledge? What are you looking for, right? Those that are looking for knowledge, well, we need historians, we need social club, we need all different kinds, right? So wherever we can fill the fit to them, right? To marry the two together, right? Whether it's a committee, the social committee, whether it's education, whether it's a table lodge committee, because he's the social guy, wants to have fun, right? Where that's kind of how we do it now. So when somebody comes in, we find out what they're looking for, and we point them in that direction of the lodge and say, these are the different things that are available and that are going on, and we need a chairman for this committee, or we need members on these committees to help these things go. So why don't you get involved with that end, right?
Yeah.
And kind of point them to where they were looking for in the first place.
Is that pretty successful?
Yeah, so far. I mean, the only time that it's not worked is when the brothers' shifts change at work and they can't come to lodge on a regular basis anymore, right? Or they end up moving or going out of town for work, and they can only make 2 or 3 meetings a year now, right? That's the only time it's really not worked properly. But otherwise, like Bob Goslin, he's early 70s now. He was a city cop for a number of years, and he was a Shriner. He liked to have fun. He had a stroke. He couldn't do the memory work much, right? Didn't want to go through the chairs, right? But he said, wants to be involved. When the mentorship program came about, that gave him a goal and a purpose in life, and that was to help be the chairman of the mentorship committee. Eventually, as guys came through the program, he'd recruit them into helping them become coaches, right? And they would mentor others coming through, and so on, right? And so once we found out that this was his idea, that he really just was looking for something to do that would make him feel of value, and that it couldn't really do. He helps people with memory work, but he can't do the memory work himself, right? So he teaches them, right? So I guess those who can't teach, remember that, yeah, right? But he does a really good job of it, right? So I found a niche to plug him into, right? And that's worked out really, really well, right? So it's that type of philosophy we have, is try and marry them up to what they are looking for, right? Like another young fellow, he was wanting knowledge, he wanted history, he wanted to know a little bit more about the esoteric side of things, right? So we got him involved with the More Light Night. So why don't you do some presentations on stuff at the More Light Night? Find something that you think is interesting, and read up on it, prepare for it, and then be prepared to present it and discuss it at More Light Night, right? So next thing you know, he's got a binder of things that he's put together that it was like, all right, now we got like 6 months worth of content, yeah, right? And he got to participate, right? And so by that he learned, and then pandemic hit and this all got shut down, right? So
Well, I know we only have a couple minutes left, but how does a guy know? Maybe that's a question we could lead into the next one. How does a guy know what he wants to be part of when he's becoming, and he doesn't know what's there to be part of? I mean, as a new guy comes in, he doesn't know.
He has no idea. But the guy running the 6-step program, he knows what's available. And he's the one asking the questions. What is it you're looking for? You're looking for fellowship? Okay, you know what? You should be part of the communications committee, and they arrange all the carpooling and to go to the different events up and down the valley, right? Maybe you can help with that, right? And then
I would hope that everybody's looking for fellowship at some level, though.
Well, yeah, and the majority are, right. The majority, well, we found that the majority are there for the fellowship. They're not necessarily there for education or
well,
yes,
isn't it? But like we found out with that last article we read that, or talked about, they sometimes they're there for fellowship and knowledge and all these things, but when we only deliver fellowship and we don't deliver the knowledge, then the fellowship becomes automatic, and that's what people stick for because that's all we have. But if we had the knowledge, if we had the other things involved, they might, like your More Light Night. If the More Light Night was still happening, maybe there would be guys interested in that. I don't know.
Right.
Maybe not.
Yeah. Right. And so I'm fully confident that the More Light Night and the socials will get back into the regular swing of things come this fall. I think everybody's here in our district anyways is just a little Some of them are still reserved as to coming back to lodge full out, right? And some lodges took some hits. Membership is down, right? And the problem is they've got candidates to put through and not enough members to put them through, right? So catch-22, right? But those are fellowships, the easiest thing to fulfill when that's what they're looking for, right? It's the other pieces, right? But we guide them. If you guide them point them in the right direction, it's usually pretty good that way.
So on that note, there's two quick things I wanted to say, since we're doing an informaler than usual conversation here. There's two things I wanted to say at the top of the show that I didn't. One of which is I just spent the last 2 days and a couple hours with the esotericism in Freemasonry conference here at Occidental Lodge in the Ballard Masonic Center here in Seattle, and it was freaking awesome. There were things that were going clear over my head and things that blew my mind, and it was great. And I can't recommend it enough. They're going to do it again next year. Troy Sprue, friend of the pod, and Ken Lane, friend of the pod, organize it. And there's all sorts of great stuff there. It's going to be the first weekend in October again next year, most likely. Their website is esotericmasonry.com, and it's awesome. Can't recommend it enough. All sorts of high-powered speakers and stuff are there. Truly great.
You remind me, I'll be sure to put that in the show notes.
And maybe you could do an intro when you do the exit.
And the other thing I wanted to say was, and this is going to be too long for the time we have left, is towards the end of the last episode that we recorded, I said something along the lines of the difference between Masons and members. And in retrospect, I think it may have come off a little snooty and looking down my nose at other Masons thing. And I know I've said on this podcast, and I honestly believe, I actually just said it today at lunch, that your Masonry and my Masonry can be different, and that's okay. And I think that sometimes the men who join the fraternity get failed by their lodges, and the lodge is looking for members, and the lodge is looking for names on a list.
Amen.
And those men get failed by their lodge. And I really, really, really do not at all mean to imply that I am somehow, or someone else is somehow, a better Mason than another brother, because that is really not what I was shooting for. So there's my disclaimer for my previous ham-fisted comment. And with that, thank you for listening to the Working Tools podcast and listening to us ramble on about membership and keeping people active in our lodges. And we look forward to talking to you again soon on the Working Tools podcast. Goodbye.